Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of October 11, 2021. In terms of the stock market direction, and by that I mean Dow Jones and Nasdaq, I think it's going to be an overall up week. And particularly Monday, I think is going to be an up day, Tuesday also an up day, and on Wednesday the market may reverse to down and then pick up and reverse back to up on Thursday and Friday. In terms of the specific influences or important news that we may expect for each individual day of the week, I think Monday looks to be less stressful as far as concerns about various programs or say rates or debt, etc., compared to the previous week, and so therefore my prediction for Monday is up. As an ongoing prediction, or rather ongoing influence, we're now in the first half of the lunar month. We had new moon on the 6th of October, and we will have full moon, which typically corresponds with like culmination of the events that kind of begin around the 6th on the 20th. And this particular half the month may see things focus on either weapons, deals related to weapons, sports, military activities, also anything that involves fighting or risky or gambling type activities. So there may be a wrapping up of some negotiations that either involve weapons, again, maybe like sales, for example, or partnerships that again involve partners, but again, with the aim of collaborating again to be, I guess, mutually supportive in terms of military, for example. And at the same time, there may be focus on reaching a deal because the new moon was in Libra, making sure that the parties reach some sort of agreement or a law is passed. At the same time, with Mars being there on the new moon, basically, the agreement I would say is unlikely to be reached at this time, at least not by the mutual agreement, not in sort of a kind of a diplomatic pleasant way. If there is a deal reached by say the 20th, which again in my case, in my personal view, I think it's unlikely, or at least the deals that began right around the 6th of October, I think the situation may actually intensify, and by the 20th there actually may be more fighting, or even the negotiations may even break down. Or the other alternative outcome may be that indeed an agreement is reached, but it's through some sort of coercion or manipulation, or one side just basically forcing the other side to submit, and whatever the deal contract is reached is not necessarily benefiting both sides equally. So there's this desire to each kind of a bilateral agreement or for partners to cooperate, but there may be some imbalance in terms of the status or the power of each individual partner, and again that may lead to frictions. And unfortunately by the 20th, when we will have Mars squaring Pluto, I think there will actually be an increase, intensification in various like threats or just angry disputes, or even just kind of protests, or just some outbreaks where there's going to be even more anger. And that may manifest in some negative way, such as, like I said, an agreement or a deal that's pending may actually be called off, again, at least delayed until some time later. And that's globally. For China, the period from October 4th through the 12th, and especially last week, I guess end of last week, but still in effect through the 12th, is actually a time period where there are a lot of transits to its chart, as well as to the chart of the Evergrande group, that are indicative of indeed focus on loans, debt, currencies, rates, and taxes, insurance, and there may be tariffs, and there may also be focus on things like oil, gas, floods, pollution, chemicals, navy, maritime shipments, and all the Neptunian domains. And there might be either, again, some problems in those areas from bad weather causing, say, excessive floods, or an accident that involves like a ship on the water, for example. But there also may be important announcements related to finance. The peak for those announcements to come was 8th through the 10th of October, but through the 12th there may still be, like I said, important announcements, or perhaps there are announcements that I'm not aware of. But there's something along the lines of some big either event or announcement or decision that will indeed affect large groups of people, or will be known through, say, media to large groups of people. And the nature of the decision is that there may be some quick, aggressive or decisive action taken to address some financial issue, how much some entity is earning or the spending. So if there's indeed some situation, again, for example, of course, involving concerns about the Evergrande maybe defaulting, indeed there may be some quick decision is made to address the situation to prevent that from happening, or it could be a decision to indeed do something either risky or something that involves kind of a quick, aggressive, decisive action, and it may not be done with a lot of preparation necessarily, but rather it's something that kind of you need to stop the situation from getting worse. Like if there's an accident and somebody breaks their limb or something like that, just things need to be addressed really fast, and subsequent kind of a more detailed surgery that takes care of the specific alignment of the bones can take place later, but first the emergency situation needs to be addressed. So that's the nature of potentially the announcement that may still come through the 12th of October, and that's for China specifically. So speaking of the 12th of October, I think it's going to be an up day for the markets. There may be some generally globally optimism about either businesses or projects related to IT, telecommunications, aerospace, airlines, high tech, maybe electric cars, and specifically that optimism may be about long-term profits, long-term success, or long-term, some profitable opportunities. So nothing that may be exciting about like literally some announcement about maybe some company reporting some major profits. Rather, it will be something along the lines of like hopeful and optimistic kind of a mood about future success for these industries, given some announcement of say projects or how the companies are doing, how healthy, how stable they are, and also if there are negotiations or some projects that involve international collaborations, again, IT, electric cars, or telecommunications, airlines, aerospace, etc. Those or shipping, exchanging goods, for example, across borders, or collaborating again across international borders. Those projects announced at this time will likely succeed long term, and that's where there may be optimism about these projects doing well, collaboration helping kind of things succeed long term, and that I think may be one of the reasons for the market to go up on Tuesday. Wednesday looks a little bit more stressful, and particularly for US, there may be some unpleasant situations involving negotiations with partners. So maybe, again, not necessarily a breakup of agreements or some major disagreements, but rather something that's kind of annoying or awkward, or maybe something is not communicated correctly, or if there's a deal or negotiation or involving like communication, transportation, commerce, social media companies, education-related projects or entities. Those areas, there might be some hiccups or some displeasure about how things are going, or there may be some concerns about increased regulation of some of those areas. And I think Wednesday, the 13th of October, is going to be a down day. Thursday and Friday look again back to be up days for me. And then for the US, Thursday and Friday, 14th and 15th of October, may, I think, see announcements about some new goals or projects or new visions for the future, and some hope and optimism that involves partnerships and international partners, and maybe hope about increasing earnings or reaching agreements that are specifically profitable for the US. And especially there may be some announcements or about either projects or agreements, or at least new focus, new goals that look to improve international relations and international commerce. So maybe has something to do with like tariffs, or making it easier to ship things from one country to another. But again, Thursday, Friday look positive for those kind of industries for the US. Globally, Friday the 15th looks like an hopeful and optimistic day in terms of the news about some international relations, agreements, long-distance shipments. So if there's maybe not payment, but shipments stuck somewhere at this time on Friday, it may actually be let through more easily. And the goods or people, if say there are flight delays, again, internationally specifically, they may now, or over long distances, things may now proceed more smoothly than earlier in the week. And again, something that maybe was stuck, or there was what is out of stock, or a shipment was stuck there, or there's some, breakdown of some truck or something. Now again, as of Friday, things will start rolling a lot smoother, and so either people or goods will be transported faster or with fewer issues than earlier in the week, or earlier even in the previous weeks. And in general, 15th through the 19th of October may see some focus on issues related to long distance transportation, communication, shipments, and there may be some increased focus on either laws or regulations involving that. Also when it comes to immigration laws, or just movement of goods and people over long distances internationally specifically. And if there are some pending laws that are expected to be passed at that time to improve or make things easier for people to immigrate, easier for goods to be shipped, like increased number of vehicles or ships or routes that are available for moving basically goods, people, all those things. On 15th through the 19th, those areas should see improved circumstances, and indeed there should be improved movement of basically across long distances, and so there are any blockages, they may be indeed unblocked at that time. At the same time, in terms of weather, there's an increased probability of also fires or excessive winds spreading also faster or quicker, or I guess with more ease than usual. So if there's a place on the planet, I don't know exactly which location, but if there is a chance or concerns about fires due to especially winds, dry weather, then I would say one needs to be careful 15th through the 19th of October, because that's when those kind of fires may spread more easily, again due to just droughts and excessive winds. So now let's talk about the 2021 remaining few months. What are some of the highlights for the upcoming weeks and months, I guess. The October 18th through the 24th, and especially 22nd and 23rd, look a little bit more tense. We will have Pluto and Mars, as I mentioned earlier, basically squaring, and that's typically corresponds with increase of various tensions, major earthquakes or shakeups, where they're just accidents. If there's any sporting events, for example, are to take place, or somebody's trying to be, a daredevil, jump, on a motorcycle across like cars or something like that, or bungee jumping, or just anything that's like risky and dangerous and involves sharp objects, fast-moving vehicles, military. All of those situations may kind of not turn out as well as expected, because they're more likely to get out of control, or there may be an unexpected shakeup basically. So this could range from some problems at the mine, for example, something basically some underground storage may experience a problem. There may be problems like in the tunnels or bridges, because again due to some mudslide or a rock slide or earthquake or just some shakeup. And similarly, when it comes to large companies and or governmental entities, there may be some shakeups where again there are either protests against them, or there's just basically some kind of more inner fighting, or there may be some scandals involving some either secrets that were previously hidden, or there may be some concerns about pollution, because again something that's been previously underground, because say due to an earthquake or something may come up where it was supposed to be securely stored, now it's not, and there are concerns about pollution, and again something from underground or is underground, or the ground itself is shaking. So that's 18th through the 24th of October. In terms of oil, there may be also a drop in oil prices around the 25th through the 28th of October, and that possibly could be due to just excessive kind of inventory, or due to concerns about the value or the price of oil, I guess, and gas as well, being just way too high. And at that point there's either some regulation or just things drop down because just things kind of go high, too high, and there needs to be a pullback basically. After that, the important time period is about 2 weeks in November, so from approximately 8th through the 19th, that's global, where we will have a little bit of a tense time period. We will have first the week of the 8th, Mars and Mercury will be squaring Saturn, and then the following week of the 18th of November we will have Mars opposing Uranus, and again we may expect various shakeups, problems with some structures that are old, outdated, some old buildings, or again could be a company that previously been seen as solid, but maybe their policies or their activities or functions somehow are outdated and they're not kind of keeping up with the times. And so basically there may be some all kinds of issues there, where either again from just earthquakes and some buildings suffering some structural damage. There may be also accidents, a variety of problems, and they specifically, especially the week of the 8th of November, may involve a variety of metals, so like steel, iron, for example. Maybe either we may hear about some tariffs or shortage, or some delays with either delivering supplies or producing supplies, or again just shortage of availability of say, various metals. That's for the week of the 8th, and then on the 15th the focus may be on some, again, fighting or some problems like service outages, power outages, or some disruptions in flights, disruptions for airline industries, for telecoms, for IT services providers, and also there may be the week of the 15th, there may also be surprising or shocking or kind of fast unfolding developments that involve banks, finance, currencies, cryptocurrencies, and there may be greater than usual volatility again in cryptocurrencies, forex, and again this could be due to some suddenly fluctuating kind of a rapidly development situations, and this could be a reaction or overreaction to some rule or some law that may affect international trade, or again specifically affect airlines or electric power, batteries, electric cars, IT, and again airspace and social media. So the overreaction on the 15th, the week of the 15th of November, could be due to some laws or some regulations, or it could be due to just some surprising announcements or volatility of the market. Again, just whatever the news will come up at that time, the market may overreact, and again there may also be associated power and service outages at the same time. Also, early November looks a little bit difficult for US and France. Indeed, there may be, I think, maybe some follow-up developments that somehow are related to this AUKUS trilateral agreement between US, UK, and Australia that I guess France was angry over, and independently of that, or could be related to this, or independently of that, for France, early November seems to be significant, where there may be some increased focus on things like Navy, floods, precipitation, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, etc. And there may be either some news about some legal regulations or some legal changes about, again, related to Navy, maritime shipments, building of anything related to, water, I don't know if it's a dam or water supply or anything, maybe even chemical plant. But those kind of areas in France may experience increased focus in the early November, especially 3rd through the 6th. And again, this could be related to this AUKUS agreement that US had recently in September entered into, or it could be just multiple other issues that are specific to France, but yet there might be just developments in those areas, but also there may be some sort of excitement, some hope, or some promise that maybe there's some new opportunities again in those areas, maybe even related to oil and gas. Maybe they'll find something, or maybe they'll find a new buyer for like a ship or something like that for their shipbuilding capabilities, for something along those lines that may be either exciting, but more exciting along the lines of kind of there being this promise and big dream kind of unfolding with a big kind of a very exciting promise to it. Doesn't necessarily mean that things will happen right in the early April, and there will be some follow-up times for both US and France, where there may be some follow-up activities related to this Navy kind of related agreements or Navy deals, or any collaboration that involves Navy, or also chemicals, pharmaceuticals, oil, gas, etc. And for both US and France, the times will be December 21 of this year, December 2021, especially 7th through 9th, then 11th through 17th, and 25th through 31st. Then mid-January of 2022, first half of March of 2022, and then late March and pretty much all of April 2022, and especially early April. After that, May 11th through the 19th, and June 10th through the 17th. So there are multiple periods basically coming up for France where this theme of Navy and, like I said, also any other Neptunian areas, which could be, again, excessive precipitation or building a dam or building, I don't know, a huge aquarium, for example, or any, plant that produces some chemicals or investment in some pharmaceutical or something like that. All of those areas, I think, will continue to be quite important and in the news for France, and there may be some important developments. Again, they may be related to collaboration with international partners involving Navy, but it could be also other sort of marine themes, water themes, and pharmaceutical chemical themed activities. Then after that, globally, December definitely looks to be an important month. In particular, the early in the month, 7th through the 8th of December, may see increased market volatility. There may be greater than usual swings, and I think it could be that the 7th and or 8th may be down days, and then things may reverse to up on the 9th, and the 10th may again go down. So some volatility of up and down, and especially 7th and or 8th look a little bit more stressful. Concerns may be about either just some overexpansion and basically also maybe increased price of oil, for example. There may also be at the same time in parallel some increased news about things like fires, oil or gas leaks, or some problems involving gas, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, water pollution. So perhaps in the news about oil spill polluting the water, for example, or just increased number of things that are, say, on the water, like the increased number of ships that can dock, or ships that are tankers that have oil and there's just too many of them, but somehow it's just almost too much. Or again, there's a spill and the water is polluted, or maybe there's bad weather and therefore the shipping route is impacted, and again, therefore there's just congregation of certain kind of ships, especially oil tankers, for example, in one area, or tankers that have some chemicals on them, or even a spill of a chemical or something like that into the water. So that's definitely looks a little bit more difficult 7th through 8th of December. And after that, right around mid of December 15th, but plus minus a couple of days, we will have also a difficult situation globally, where we will have increased sort of back, the square between Saturn and Uranus that's unfolding for many months and pretty much is in effect from 2021 to 2022. It will become, again, a little bit more precise right in the middle of December of 2021, while at the same time we will have a difficult transit from Mars to the south node and north node of the moon. Mars will actually join the south node of the moon on the 15th of December of this year, and that typically coincides with specifically some difficult situations that, again, are accidents, or something collapses, or something catches fire, or just there's some other kind of a problem, either act of aggression or just but basically some turbulence. And at the same time, on the 15th, there's also a transit to US chart that indicates some potential changes or announcement related to US financial policies. And I think at the same time we may also see an up move in the gold and potentially also silver prices in the middle of December. So definitely mid-December looks like an important time, from just globally time of some accidents, increased number of accidents, earthquakes, or some shakeups, oil pollution like spills, or some problems that basically prevent things from being shipped properly. And at the same time, there may be also announcement out of the US specifically about policies that affect finance, banks, rates, currencies, and that again may in turn, of course, affect cryptocurrencies and oil and gold and silver value, which I think will go up at that time, and that might be sort of one of the more strong significant influences for gold to go up right around mid of December, which I'm not saying for 2022. So I'm not sure what happens after that long term, but it may be a peak that will see gold potentially going down in value after that. Looking into 2022, again, just very general highlight, just because this seems to be quite a sort of a event-packed year, we will see some important difficult transits again right around early March, March 2nd. We will have Mars, Venus, and Pluto will conjunct on Capricorn, which indicates again some sort of shakeups, either literally earthquakes or shakeups of the government or in leadership of some large corporations or restructuring of corporations, or could be just protests, upsets over some increased governmental regulations or concerns about earnings or debt or financial losses. And at the same time, right again, March 2nd of 2022, we will have Mercury conjuncting Saturn in Aquarius, which to me indicates some sort of negotiations or even regulations or problems related to communication, transportation companies, including problems for telecoms, for social media, for IT companies, and delayed flights, problems with reaching an agreement, problems with delayed processing that specifically uses either internet, like electronic processing being delayed, some outages are delayed with processing things through basically the internet, maybe again processing of any digital payments, for example, or through communicating via social media. There may be some either increased regulations on those areas or just some sort of delays or problems with using those services. And after that, we will have a new moon on the 31st of March, which looks significant because, again, we'll have all kinds of developments late March and throughout most of the April. And so definitely important to pay attention to the time of the new moon around that time, which will color, of course, the the mood for the upcoming weeks after that. So on the 31st of March, during that moon, we will have Saturn squaring the nodes of the moon, which typically coincides with strong, impactful developments, which Saturn rules things like government, regulations, of course, earthquakes, shakeups, larger structures, or the literal actual structures like buildings or structures that were built, because they're governmental structures or some large company has a, well-defined structure. And so those structures, Saturn being, the representation of that, squaring nodes, it will be like some changes in either who the leader is or how some companies is structured or how some government is structured, some major changes, and that may, or even some buildings, things that were expected to be maybe standing for a long time, or maybe buildings that are indeed old, or bridges or whatever. And when Saturn comes into difficult transit to the nodes, it typically coincides with a major accident, major earthquake, or major, like bridge collapsing, for example. And so definitely it's important to pay attention to whatever might transpire around the time of the 31st of March, because it will give us a better idea as to what to expect in the early April, where we will have around the 4th and the 5th will be even more kind of a tense, difficult influence, when we will have Neptune and Jupiter quite closely conjunct, indicative of really strong increase in oil prices, floods, excessive precipitation, concerns about various either pandemics or just infectious diseases, focus on pharmaceuticals, religious practices or places of worship, etc., movies, beverages, any liquids really. And at the same time, we will not have just Saturn conjuncting the nodes on the 4th, 5th of April of 2022. We'll have now Mars and Saturn together, which that's kind of bad enough by itself. It's like indicates, broken bones, broken anything that's solid, broken structures, basically squaring moon nodes, which indicates that it's a wide spread. Like if there's an earthquake, it may have greater than usual kind of a spread in terms of its effect or losses that it may cause. Or if there is a structure of some sort that's collapsing, again, either literally a building or a mountain, or it could be a company, for example, that the effects of that collapse may be, or at least restructuring, may be more significant than at other times. So on the 4th and 5th, we'll have that, and also moon will be also on one of the nodes right in that early April timeframe. So definitely something that may be happening either, geopolitically, economically, or literally just through, like I said, an Earth basically having some sort of a like I said, shake-up, like a mudslide, earthquake, etc. And that may, because of the nodes actually being rather because of Mars and Saturn squaring the nodes from Aquarius, it may indeed be related to the areas that are related to Aquarius. So that would be anything that's related to IT, airlines, telecommunications, digital, online processing of anything, really any signals, any data, social media, electric cars, electronic gadgets, phones, really computers, anything of that nature. So this shakeup or restructuring or some announcements may involve say electric car company or an IT company, airspace project, airlines, and also additionally in terms of weather, it may just be, again, it could be multiple situations all at once. There may be a massive storm, and especially something that involves like a lot of lightning or thundering, something that maybe leads to loss of electric power, and again, to a large number of people, and the situation may either affect large number of people, like geographically, and or it could receive wide coverage where it will be just really all over the news. It could be something like a large quake, plane crash, and or a large financial loss by like a social media or an airline. I think those might be the top strongest possibilities. That's for late March, early April. And after that, another time period that's of importance will be right around the 1st of August in 2022. At that time, we will have Mars conjunct Uranus, also conjunct one of the nodes, and that again indicates a large important event and happening in Taurus. I think it will involve banks, finance, and currencies, and cryptocurrencies in particular, with Uranus ruling anything that's digital, electronic, etc. So it may involve sudden defaulting by one large financial entity, a sudden change in the value of, again, like currency or cryptocurrency or bank or financial institution. Something like a program may be abruptly stopped, or a new program can be, started much faster. That again, maybe a program that rules loans, for example, or debt. Some rate may suddenly change. And basically, it may involve some digital solution, technical solutions, processing of data or financial transactions online, so things of that nature. And there may also be like an abrupt cancellation of some project, or sudden, loss of power, for example. And again, also with Mars and Uranus, as usual, the signature is also indicative of some actual accidents, like an airplane accident, or again, strong thunderstorm or something like that affects power and basically loss of power to a large number of people. Or it could be something that is an explosion and fire. Again, could be like electric power plant, for example, again, due to just weather, nothing sinister, as in like it just may be a weather related event. Or it could be just a lot of unfortunately, like protests and just people losing kind of temper, and those things may, if indeed they're ongoing protests at the time, they may escalate and take a little bit more violent turn than usual, and again increased just kind of turbulence, and maybe like August, I guess, in the northern hemisphere, of course, summer. So if there are regions prone to having like fires in the summer, around August 1st, indeed, plus minus a few days, if not a few weeks, definitely is a time where there may be really major fires, some major problems that of course go along with that. And indeed there may be, Taurus also rules things like constructions and farming. So indeed, if there are these major fires, for example, there may be concerns about some construction projects being kind of not being able to be finished, or problems about agriculture and farming, and things basically affecting like cattle and things like that. So hopefully nothing like that will happen, but being August, that's kind of one of the possibilities, and definitely some tribulation for finance and especially for currencies. As I mentioned before several times, basically this whole spring we'll have Jupiter going through Pisces. Really, it will start from December 29th of 2021 through about May of 2022, and with Jupiter conjunct Neptune in Pisces late March, through early April, quite tightly. Definitely increase in oil and gas prices is likely, or any really companies that are involved in things like beverages, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, oil, gas. They may, movies, visual, anything, photography, etc. They may make really good money, and the prices and profits from those industries may increase at the same time. At that, by April, I think, or May even, things may just kind of reach saturation, and then after that, the prices may go down. Similarly, if there are floods, which is another due to excessive precipitation with, Jupiter and Neptune and Pisces, all of that, is quite likely that there will be some really, really major floods this spring, maybe snowfalls in the winter and then floods in the spring, and then they may subside, starting May and into June. But definitely late March, and especially pretty much all of April, especially early April, things look particularly difficult in terms of flooding. And for China specifically, actually, the concerns about flooding may continue into summer, and in fact, July and August kind of look even worse in terms of flooding for China specifically. After that, globally, mid-September to late October looks important to me, especially, plus minus a few days around October 11th of 2022, and that's when we will have final passage of Saturn to Uranus, while at the same time we will have Mars with Moon will be squaring Neptune. So right around the 7th of October to the 15th of October seem to be like a time when there may be some, again, problems for, say, oil companies or gas or navy or transportation over water. Again, it could be like a accident involving gas leak, oil spill, or some arguments over oil and gas prices, or some arguments over anything that's Neptunian, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, religion, beverages, contamination of various liquids, like, for example, maritime transportation accident leads to an oil spill and water is contaminating. There's a lot of upset over that, and of course it leads to concerns about pollution. So all of those could be sort of related. And at the same time, just separately, there may be a lot of news about various kind of troubling circumstances, maybe chemical pollution, flare-up of infectious diseases, some concerns about perhaps, again, excessive precipitation and things of that nature. And after that, early November, from about the 1st through the 11th, we'll yet again see some difficult times when there may be increased probability of a major earthquake. And in terms of previous times where it had occurred, a similar kind of astrological formation had occurred, previously impacted Turkey and China. And specifically, one example was like in August-September of 1999, there was a 7.6 earthquake in Turkey, the Izmit, Turkey, on August 17th. And then there was also a major earthquake in Taiwan, I believe. I think it was also 99. But basically, it could be anywhere in the world, but right around the 1st through the 11th of November 2022, it definitely is a time of some major geopolitical tensions, as well as major earthquakes and either some sort of accidents, plane crashes, increase in militarized activities, various like spike in like clashes between angry groups. Could be just protests, could be accidents, or could be indeed some military activities, or activities again like military is mobilized because maybe there's a major earthquake and they need to be mobilized to help people. So it could be for a different reason, but just this big movement of people who need to address something because of some problem. And again, this could be earthquake, military clashes, protests, some accident, things of that nature. And basically at the same time, in the US on the 8th of November, of course, there are midterm elections, and it so happens to be a total lunar eclipse with a lot of difficult transits right on the 8th, which means it's going to be a more significant time than usual. And I believe there'll be Uranus on one of the moon nodes, which again, there may be some concerns about there being a lot of volatility, a lot of sort of up and down kind of instability or volatility in the markets. Again, with this being in Taurus, there might be effect on the markets, effect on currencies, cryptocurrencies in particular, and banking sector in general. So definitely kind of an interesting time period ahead of us in terms of 2022. And then to move on to the final segment of this video is that 2022-23 is actually going to see what's called a Pluto return, and I may do a separate video of that on that, but just to kind of briefly mention that it's not just going to be a Pluto return from the US, but also as we're experiencing from 2021 through 2024, there will be several other sort of major transits unfolding at the same time. In particular, right now we already are experiencing it. Pluto is opposing US Mercury, and that has to do with like communication, transportation, and education. So all of those areas may experience some major changes, reformation. Previous transit to this particular degree where US Mercury resides from other slow-moving planets, specifically Neptune, actually coincided with major, and Pluto as well, coincided with major like communication and telecommunication acts. So specifically when Pluto actually conjunct Mercury back in 1934, there was a communications act passed by Roosevelt, and then in 96 it was amended. That was a telecommunications act of 1996, and at that time was actually I believe it was in opposition to Mercury, US Mercury from Neptune. So definitely right upon us right now, 2021, 2022, when Pluto is going to be opposing US Mercury, there might be some major changes in the, again, transportation, commerce, communication, including social media and education areas. Pluto, going back to its own position, what's called the Pluto return, previously coincided, and of course, with it being in the second house of bank, finance, etc., profits, it coincided with situations, specifically in 1935, there was a major financial reform where I guess there were some changes as far as how banks were regulated, and there were some changes affecting specifically the Federal Reserve and FDIC. And so we may expect some adjustments in those areas again to happen right in 22-23. And also, of course, the second house and the eighth house, where the Pluto and Mercury are in the US chart, have to do generally, again, not just with earnings, but also with losses, rates, investments, taxes, and tariffs, insurance, and things of that nature, defaults, of course, or loans. So all of those areas may definitely undergo some major reforms, and again, something that may be legal and major and kind of long-lasting for many decades. And one of the examples that I found from when Pluto actually squared its own position, because this is the first time it's going to conjunct its own position, but we had previously times when Pluto squared itself and opposed itself. Like I said, back in 1935 there was an opposition, and back in 83, there was a square from Pluto to US Pluto, and at that time there was a situation that involved the largest default of the municipal utility in the, I guess, US history, where there was this company, WPPS, basically some sort of Northwest Energy, I think it was renamed later, where it basically defaulted on $2.25 billion, and that was due to basically them building 5 like nuclear plants, out of which I guess 2 they didn't finish. There were not enough funds, and I guess the demand for the energy also kind of went down, and so they neither could finish building those nuclear plants, nor could they basically gain some money, because not functioning plant, they couldn't generate the money, so they had to default on that loan. And so of course that fits perfectly with the influence associated with Pluto, which is debt, but also things that are hidden, scandals, and nuclear power in particular, power plants in general, and of course things like default and debt. And so we have this massive scale of debt, and again it had to do with nuclear power plants. So I'm not saying that we will see exactly the same situation repeat itself, but this could be another area where there may be more news about large companies defaulting, especially if they're related to power plants, or some changes in the policies that regulate power plants, especially nuclear power plants or nuclear power in general. And of course there may be some situation that arise that perhaps initially they're problematic, but then there's a new law, new regulations that are implemented to address those issues, and this begins like a new multi-decade kind of a cycle where there will be new laws and new regulations governing again by the power plants, rates, financial policies, and how money is borrowed, under what conditions, to what entities, and what are the conditions under which somebody can apply for a loan again. Or it could be regulations of like nuclear power plants, and things of that nature. Let's see. And at the same time, as I mentioned, besides these kind of transits from the Pluto, we will also have in 22-23 and even into 24 in the US, we will have difficult transit from Neptune. It will be making difficult transit to Mars in the US chart, to its own position in the US chart, and also it will then enter into the 4th house in the US chart. And 4th and 10th house, of course, are opposite each other and have to do with things like homeland security, just security of the land, security of people, security of those who are more in need, like women and children, security of food supply, borders, and farming, and also bank stability, like real estate, some assets that bank invest in to kind of save and protect their money. So the kind of issue of protection, motherland. And the 10th house has to do with things like leadership, status in the world arena, and kind of more of outward presentation, so to speak. And so with Neptune kind of entering the 4th house, it may literally bring more things like flooding, for example, which may affect, of course, agriculture and farming, or even real estate value. Could be things literally are just flooded, or things like mortgages underwater, or just confusion about what is or isn't valuable, what to invest in, confusion about which bank is or isn't stable, what food is or isn't safe to eat. Of course, too much water can contaminate the soil, of course, things like, or make it difficult for farmers, of course, to harvest crops, for example. So that's one side of the issue. At the same time, as I mentioned, Neptune is going to be making difficult transit to Mars and Neptune itself in US chart. And those areas are related, of course, to things like military or sports, or any risky kind of assertive activities that involve like maybe addressing like fires, or something that's a dangerous situation that needs to be addressed quickly, again, to keep things safe and under control. And Neptune, of course, is the kind of planet that usually brings things like fog, kind of indecisiveness, confusion, and it may be just due to the circumstances being unclear, miscommunication, but unfortunately it may lead to some problems for those areas, such as military, sports, and Neptune, of course, has to do with like things like chemicals and water. So the problems are also poisoning. So the problems may arise against, especially related to Navy, or problems maybe due to miscommunication, or just things being in the wrong place in the wrong time. And so that is especially in effect through about February of next year, 2022. After that, Neptune is going to be opposing its own position in the US chart in 22-23, more or less, and that will coincide, I believe, with major changes related to industries that are governed by Neptune. So that would be things like, of course, Navy, for example, or the filtering of water, or any water, municipal, utilities that govern basically how the water is cleaned and processed or distributed, I guess, to the population. Also anything to do with chemicals, pharmaceuticals, oil, gas, any of the pipelines or ships, anything that is involved in shipping of liquids or chemicals, or uses liquids or chemicals to produce, some sort of products, for example, and or is literally somehow involved in maybe transporting things through liquids or underwater, or uses body of water for whatever purpose. So there may be concerns about some of these industries because, of course, the opposition is a difficult transit, and so things may come up where there may be concerns about, say, clean water, or concerns about flooding, maybe contaminating some, water supply, or concerns about oil industries, and some really major changes may arise in those areas that again will be felt for decades to come. Some major reforms, some major acts, and again they may be good positive developments where perhaps there's some strong flooding, it causes pollution of farmland, for example, and some new act and regulation is implemented to basically prevent that from happening ever again. So it's not necessarily doesn't have to be a bad situation all around, but there might be some concerns that perhaps previously weren't as evident, or previously weren't having as much impact, and now there will be seen as much more, I guess, impactful, and there will be some major changes in those industries at the same time. But as I said, overall, with both Pluto transits and important Neptune transits for the US, the whole time of 22-23 and even into 2024 looks like a definitely time of some major changes and some major developments where there may be major financial reforms, some major kind of reforms affecting banks and real estate value, and of course the second house in general has to do with just value. So there may be changes in terms of like what is seen as valuable or not, and is maybe of monetary value or not, but the whole kind of a way sort of approaching where to put value, or which real estate is valuable, or is real estate valuable, that even as a concept may change with these kind of strong transits, and that's what's coming up kind of a next couple years. So that's it for me. I hope you're having a fantastic week and you enjoyed this video. Come back and check me out next week. Until then, great, bye.